So, we're going to start, very important story, with the story of the Shaktipeeths, because we are at one of the most important and powerful Shakti temples in all of India, right? There are, as we've already spoken, there are some confronting things here, but it's like, okay, why do we come here anyways? Even if there are some confronting occurrences at this temple, because it's one of the most, if not the most, important tantric pilgrimage sites in the world, not just in India. This is where the goddess's yoni fell to earth. And we're going to go into the story of the Shaktipeeths. So we've gone to a few Shaktipeeths in our time here. The Chamunda temple, I believe, in Bhubaneswar is a Shaktipeeth. The Yogini temple is not a Shaktipeeth, I don't believe, but it's still a very powerful seat of Shakti, and we'll go into a story about that as well today. We went to the Vishalakshi Shaktipeeth. We circumnavigated a Shaktipeeth inside the Jagannath temple. Are there any that I'm missing? No. And then here we're at the Maha Shaktipeeth, Kamakhya Devi. And so there are Shaktipeeths spread across India, but the highest concentration is in West Bengal and kind of into East India, so into this branch of India that we are now in, up into Nepal. And there's different, well, some people say there are 52 Shaktipeeths. Some say there are 64, which is a number we also remember from the Yogini temple, so we know there's a significance in the number of 64. I tend to lean towards the 64, but I don't know. I'd have to go around and count, I suppose. It's been a joy of mine to try to go. If I learn that there's a Shaktipeeth nearby, that's one of my passions here in India, is to go to the Shaktipeeths, because there's really something there, and it's like we're going, like we did the Shavar Yatra the other night, or like you do Yoga Nidra and you're anointing different parts of the body. You can literally go visit different parts of Ma's body, which is like making a yatra of her body, right? And the earth is her body, so it's just beautiful how it arises, and it's also, you know, she has so many different faces and forms, so also the temples are showing a different face or form. So before I go into the story, something interesting about Kamakhya, there are two primary kulas, meaning schools of thought, in Shakta Tantra, meaning the goddess worshipping branch of Tantra. We don't ever want to, you can't oversimplify anything when we start to touch into these traditions. Tantra is a vast ocean with many different lineages. You know, there's an old, ancient sun-worshipping branch of Tantra. There are Ganapati, like the Ganesha Tantras. There are Shaivist Tantras. There are Shakta Tantras. So Tantra is never one thing. There's so many. It's like a river that has millions of tributaries that have their own tributaries that have their own tributaries, but they're all going to the same ocean, right? So never, when you learn something different from this person, that it's all correct, it's all part of these different lineages. However, in the Shakta branch, there are two primary schools. One is Kali Kula, which is, as we can imagine, more of a worship of the dark goddess, the dark mother, in the form of Kali, which, you know, in spite of her appearances, we have this very wrathful looking deity. Kali relates to time. And time can be fierce, because time both creates and devours all the creation, right? So we come to, but the thing we don't understand often about Kali is that she gives all the experiences that time gives. So it's not just the difficulties that she gives. She gives this moment right now, every moment, the mala of moments, that's Kali. The beauty, the terror, she helps us transcend time, transcend duality. That is the charnel ground that Kali dances within. So that is one school of thought, is the Kali worshipping traditions. And then we have what's called Shri Kula. Shri Kula is the realm of Lalita. Tripura Sundari, the beauty of the three worlds being the waking, sleeping, and waking, dream, and deep sleep states of consciousness. So she has a I always think of Kali and Lalita as like two different sides of the same coin. Ultimately, you can't go to one without the other. You need both. However, depending on your kula, you're going to orient towards a different way. The way with Shri tends to be much more sweet and sublime, although even she has a very strong and what can be intense energy, because when we encounter either Kali or Lalita, we're encountering a massive field of consciousness and energy. We encounter the space element specifically with both of them. And our consciousness can go through all kinds of hula hoops and antics when it encounters space, because space requires some level of annihilation and dissolution. So whether it's with Lalita or with Kali, we can still encounter this. I tend to think of their movements, like the movement of Kali, we're moving from form into formlessness. And with Shri, there's more of that downward energy, which is kind of that fullness coming into form. So it's just a little bit of a different way of orienting. And I mentioned this 10 years ago when we started our pilgrimage, that we hear a lot about the yoginis and the dakinis, and in the tradition I come from, or that I study within, the dakinis are the servants of Kali, so they serve the movement of awareness from form into formlessness, and the yoginis are the servants of Shri, or of Lalita, and they help the movement of that fullness from formlessness into form. So just an interesting way of looking at it, and don't get attached to it either. One idea. So, Kamakhya, this temple, depending on the kula someone is coming here from, we could say it's a Kali temple, or we could say it's a Lalita temple. Obviously the Kali energy is here, but also the Lalita energy is here. And Kama means desire. Right? So Kama is the god of desire, and we'll have a story about Kama shortly. And so Kama, the beautiful thing about desire is it moves us through time. So if Kali is the field of time, Kama, or desire, is that which moves us through. Because otherwise, what would the point be? If we didn't have our dreams and our aspirations and our hunger and our thirst, we would just rest in Shiva, pure Parabrahma. We wouldn't do anything. What is there to do? This is the Leela. We're realizing there is nothing to do. It is pure beingness, and yet in this realm something moves us, something flowers within us. But we have to choose where we shoot the arrows of our desire. Lalita has a sugarcane bow and 5 flowery arrows representing the 5 senses. These 5 senses are what pull us out to engage with the world. But here's the trick. So many are like, oh, I want to go to Lalita. Lalita will give you everything you want, and she will ensnare you in Maya in doing so. So we want to approach her with wisdom and a true understanding of what's actually important here. Because she'll give the ultimate, but if we just want a new car and a perfect husband and this, that, okay, fine, have that. But now you missed out on this, right, her fullness. So we want to take the arrows of our desire towards the highest goal. That doesn't mean, this is a beautiful thing in the Shri path. The Kali path can be a lot of dissolution and letting go. In the Shri path, you can have your adornments. You can wear your kajal. I mean, also in the Kali path, you can as well. But this is all welcome, but we don't take it too seriously. We don't take, it's a play. Costumes. We all wear many different costumes. Freedom is being able to take them off and put them on at will and to not take any of them too seriously. Because our ultimate desire is wholeness and fullness, and that merging of the three states of consciousness into one totality, the movement from separation into unity. So Kamakhya, Lalita, well, let's go to Lalita. Lalita is always seen, actually Kali and Lalita. We see most images of Kali, she's standing on top of Shiva. Shiva is a corpse. This is because without time, consciousness is inert, it doesn't move. We need Kali, we need the active Kriya Shakti in order to move things into the sequence of time. Right? So this is why Shiva is lying under Kali, and I have a story for you about that. Lalita is also seated on top of Shiva. She's seated on top of Sada Shiva, the highest form of pure consciousness. She's in union with him, sexual union, right? We don't want to take that literally though. So Kamakhya, where the yoni is, she's the goddess of desire, and she comes here to be in bedfellows with her beloved Shiva. So that's the Shri Kula orientation in this temple, and the Kali Kula orientation might be a bit different, but we know just because of the name that we have this seat of desire. There's something having to do with Kama here, right? So that's beautiful. And so you see a lot of the priests wearing red here, a lot of the sadhakas and devotees wearing red, because red is an attractive color. Right? It's very much in the world associated with rajas as far as like tamas, rajas, sattva. It's a very active move. There's a lot of movement in that color. So red is our passion, and passion in its highest form is compassion. So Shri helps transform our passion into compassion. Kamakhya can also do that. Let's go to the stories. So, the first story we have to encounter, I'm going to kind of weave several different stories together. They all stand alone, but they all weave together to create a larger story of Shiva and his Shakti. Our minds have to approach Shiva and Shakti as two separate entities. I say this again and again. Ultimately, they're not. We don't want to get into this obsessive space that I see a lot of New Age Tantra going to, where it's like, I'm Shakti and he's Shiva. We can play with that, but that's a lila. It's just a play. It's a fun play. I have no problem with it, but when we start to over-identify with it, we miss the entire point of Tantra altogether. We're both. We're everything simultaneously. And even to say we're both is not correct. They cannot be separated. Cannot. Right? There are some stories of separation. Actually, one of the Mahavidyas represents the complete, not like the widow Dhumavati represents the Shakti without any Shiva, any grounds of consciousness. And I'll talk about her for a bit later. So to start, the story of the Shaktipeeths. How did Shakti's body end up in 52 to 64 places? Well, Ma was always there. She's never not been there. Same with Shiva. But we go way back to the Vedic times. And as we know, they practiced many sacrifices and yagyas, these big fire ceremonies. This has been a way of life since the beginning of the Vedic times, the Vedic periods, probably way preceding that even. So this has been the way. And these ceremonies, they're looking for children, they're looking for the rains to come and the crops to grow and peace in the kingdoms, right? Back then India was many different kingdoms, right? So in one of these kingdoms we have Daksha and his wife, and they're trying to conceive a child, and it's not coming and not coming and not coming, and they don't know what to do. So finally, in all these stories, I love it. Whenever they come to a point that they don't know what to do, including the gods, they always go to Ma. She's the only one who can fix any problem. The gods will try, but if they can't do it, they have to go to Ma. She's the one. So Daksha very humbly goes to the Great Mother and he says, Great Mother, we've tried so hard for many years to have a child and we haven't had any success, and we would love, this is a very tall ask, we would love for you to incarnate as our beloved daughter. And she agrees under one condition. She says, I will come to earth, I will incarnate in the human realm, I will be your daughter. But my one condition is this, when I'm of marrying age, you must give me to Shiva. Okay, anything you want, as long as we have our daughter and the blessing of your presence on earth. So, sure enough, they go back, they have their conjugal moment, and his wife becomes pregnant. In the joy of their pregnancy and birth of their little girl, they completely forgot who she was, who it was who came through them. Her name was Sati. They named her Sati, and she was the apple of their eye. And from the very earliest age, she would go into the garden and chant the Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah, all these mantras to Shiva. She was obsessed with Shiva. And Daksha couldn't understand this. He was a very proper Brahmin. And, you know, it's like Shiva in his mind was this wild, dirty, like he just symbolized everything impure, right? Shiva is living in cremation grounds, smearing the ash of the bodies on his naked body and wearing the skins of tigers and cobras wrapped around him. And, you know, he's surrounded by these characters called the Ghanas, who are like this, they look like sadhus. They've got the Jata, and he also, Shiva, has dreadlocks. Like, he's quite a scene, right? Shiva's quite a scene. So Daksha's just like, Are, my daughter is like obsessed with this, like, this wild creature of a man who's just, no. Completely forgets who she is. So sure enough, she gets to the marrying age and she's like, I will marry Shiva. There's no question about this. And sure enough, I'm probably skipping some things, but sure enough, she ends up getting married, much to Daksha's chagrin, to Lord Shiva. And Shiva, upon coming together with Sati, it was like everything made sense again, right? This was his Shakti, and they'd been separated while she was on it. She's incarnated again, they're together. He's just in pure bliss. And he was very protective of her also. Just so in love, like the just absolute deepest, most profound love story ever to exist between Shiva and Sati. They found completeness with each other, and they lived together in the mountains, in the caves, very simple life. So she went from this very prestigious life to living like a sadhu in the mountains with Shiva and his Ganas. So one day, Daksha decides to have this grand sacrifice, this grand yagya fire ceremony. And he invites Indra, the god of heaven. He invites all the other gods, but he does not invite Shiva, nor his daughter, because he's so ashamed. Sati hears of this, and she's very, very, very upset. And she's like, I will go to this yagya, this is not okay. How dare he disrespect my husband like this? And she was like, this is drama, like, forget about it. It's not important. Just stay here. Don't go. And she's fuming. She's like, you're not going to tell me what to do. He's not going to do this. I'm going. And so without telling Shiva, she takes off and goes to the yagya, and she's burning with fury. She arrives at the yagya, and she faces her father, who's actually happy to see her. He misses his daughter. Right? Sati, you're here. I'm like, oh, you know, I'm sorry I didn't invite you. Da, da, da. How dare you don't invite my husband? There is no yagya, there is no worship that is complete without Shiva. Shiva represents dissolution. It's understandable. The mind wants the creation. No, give me this, give me that, give me that. And the sustenance, like support me to keep going and going. But the part the mind doesn't like, the dissolution. The things that are difficult to look at. But life isn't complete without that. So Sati says, you cannot have a proper worship without my husband. How dare you? How dare you? You invite all of them. Where is my husband? Why is he not here? She gets furious. And she steps into the yagya fire herself and self-immolates. Burns herself to a corpse in front of everyone. She destroys the entire ceremony. Daksha is, oh, my daughter! Even worse, Shiva hears. And he comes with his whole army of ganas. And they come with a ferocity. Shiva has, pure consciousness, Shanti, Shanti, but he has a ferocious side that is Raudra, angry, destructive, mad even. So this comes full force, and they march on the yagya, and they destroy everything, everything, everything. And Shiva goes to the fire where the body of Sati is, and even Shiva himself forgets who that was. And he pulls her body, her burnt corpse, from the fire, and moaning, he starts to wander the worlds, just moaning and crying, and why did this happen? My Sati, my Sati! Just the corpse is left. And Shiva himself, pure consciousness, cannot for the life of him remember that this is the Divine Mother. She's not gone anywhere. It's just a corpse. It's what? Nothing. But he is absolutely beside himself. The love of his life is gone in his eyes. And so he wanders and he wanders. And the world starts to go into chaos, because without the forces of creation, preservation, and dissolution, this turns into a mess. So we have Brahma, the creator, we have Vishnu, the preserver, we have Shiva, the destroyer, and they all work together for harmony. The three prongs of the Trishula, the trident Shiva holds, symbolizes harmony. Ida, Pingala, Sushumna, harmony, so much symbology in there. So now we've got the destroyer just like he's out to lunch, he's grieving. And his bros are like, okay, it's cool, we'll give him some time, like he's go have your... But it just goes on and on and on, and things start to get really crazy, and finally they're like, Are, what are we going to do? What are we going to do here? Shiva is like, he's lost the plot, completely forgot who his wife is. What are we going to do? So Vishnu's like, I have to do it. We have to break the bond of the attachment to her physical form so that Shiva wakes up. So he takes his chakra, the wheel, it's like a disc, what do they have, those fighting stars in martial arts? He takes it and whirls it and cuts her body into 64 pieces. And they fall all over the earth. And these are the Shaktipeeths. So this is the story of the Shaktipeeths. So where each part fell became this power place, and a temple arose in this place, and her different forms manifested in these places. And Shiva, upon the dissolution of her body, snaps out of it, but not entirely. Also, human men have a hard time getting over things. Like women we go as intensely into the emotion, and then we get to the other side. A man who gets very wounded in his heart can stay there for some time. So this happens to Shiva. But that phase is over. He's back on his duty. He's the dissolver for some time. However, at a certain point, he goes back into a deep, 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 deep meditation. Just completely absorbed in himself. And again, the world starts to go into a bit of imbalance. And Vishnu and Brahma and Indra and other gods are again like, oh my God, what are we doing? Here he goes again. So, but now he's not moaning and he's no longer Rudra. So Parvati is born. So Sati was her first incarnation. The next is Parvati. Parvati means the daughter of the mountains. So Himavat, the literal Himalayas, are her father. So she's born to Lord Himavat. And she's the love of his life, the apple of his eye, and likewise. So it's a totally different dynamic now. They are just like so in love with one another. It's like the dream, ideal daughter-father relationship. And she grows up running through the Himalayas and the fields of wild flowers and the creeks that flow and the beautiful snow-capped peaks and the clean, clean air and just, you know, it's just this delightful, you can only imagine, you know, just like the perfect thing. So she's growing up and she comes to age and her father, this guy, Himavat, he does not forget who she is. He knows her destiny is to be the wife of Lord Shiva, and he finds this to be a great honor that his daughter is the one who will marry Lord Shiva. But there's one problem. Shiva is deep, deep, deep in his sadhana. So Parvati comes of marriageable age, and she starts to go. He's also meditating in the Himalayas very conveniently. So he's like there, deep in his samadhi. And so Parvati starts to come every day. And she lays the offerings and she brings food and she sits and she enters into her own tapasya. Years and years and years. These are gods, right? So the timeline is like quite stretched. She's still young, but years of this go by, maybe even decades. She's doing this intense tapasya. Tapasya means this like very strong sadhana. Every day she goes. He never stirs. He never looks at her. Finally, he's feeling like, okay, something is happening over here. Like as little as you could crack your eye, he cracks his eye. Who is this woman? But he just, nope. You've been hurt before. You know how this goes in the human realm. Well, because he simultaneously falls madly in love with Parvati and at the same time grows very angry. Kind of all at once. So he stirs and this Raudra energy starts to come and the third eye starts to open, which with Shiva this is not such a great thing because it's like laser beams start to come and destroy things. So poor Kamadeva is like, you know when you do like as a child when you do something you shouldn't do and then you're like, oops, and you're waiting for the punishment? Yeah, so this is Kamadeva right now. He's like, just did the thing. Shiva fries him to a crisp with his third eye, burnt to ash. Kamadeva is gone, and from then on, actually, in all the stories, he's just kind of like this specter. He's still there, but he's no longer in physical form. Desire is kind of like that, isn't it, though? Right? So, but the goal was accomplished, and Shiva is like, realizes finally who Parvati is, realizes that his Sati has come back, and no question, they're getting married, let's go. So they have a beautiful wedding procession through the Himalayas, and after their wedding, both of the very happily reunited couple, Parvati and Shiva, go to live on Mount Kailash, which is Shiva's very holy mountain. We just looked it up yesterday. It's actually in Tibet.
China.
Yeah, I'm not going to call it China because it doesn't deserve to be called China. It's in Tibet. Modern day China because of unfortunate events. But Mount Kailash is there. It's not actually so far from here, although the roads would make it far. So they go to Mount Kailash and they start to make love for thousands of years. So the other gods are like, yeah. First he's so upset. Then he's So everything is a problem again, but they're like, let's just probably leave it alone. So they make love and they make love and they make love for many, 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 many years. And side story, at one point they finally tire from their lovemaking, and Parvati says to ask Shiva to tell her about yoga and the path of yoga. And this is how the Sri Vijnana Bhairava Tantra came to be. It's this beautiful dialogue, also known as the Radiant Sutras, translated. It's this beautiful dialogue between Shiva and Parvati. There's different dynamics where sometimes Parvati is the teacher and Shiva is the student, and other times it's reversed. So in this one, Shiva's teaching Parvati about the nature of yoga. And there happens to be a pond outside of their cave, and there's a little fish who hears it all, and that's how it got written down. It was this little fish in the pond that heard the whole thing. Okay, so then that happens, they learn of yoga, da-da-da. And then Shiva, because this is also a thing that men do sometimes. Now he's like, okay, I'm satisfied, so I'm leaving. And Parvati's like, hell you're leaving? Like, we just made all this love, like, for this many years, now there's the post-coital, right? This is the thing, we all know this, we're like, hello? So, Shiva is like getting ready to, he's like, okay, I must go. And Parvati's like, So she gets angry a little bit. There are 10 doorways that he can leave from. They hold that in, because the consciousness right now, it's untamed. It's going here, it's going there. So the Mahavidyas help to create this really powerful containment of energy and consciousness. They help us realize the union, right? And they are like very, they each have different powers that they help with, but every single one of them is critical on the path of awakening for a tantric sadhaka, right? They each have their very own. Some of the forms are very wrathful. In fact, it said that it's like 10 forms, like 5 are on the wrathful side and 5 are on the sublime side. We need both. We can't forget the beauty, but we also can't get too comfortable. And it's actually said that the wrathful manifestations are the most compassionate. They're the most compassionate when we really come to know them. They're the ones who are really willing to give us the hard lessons, even though we might not be so happy with them for it, to teach us who we really are, which is Shiva. So the Mahavidyas show us who we really are. So that's the story. That's as much of the story as I know. And then each of the Mahavidyas have their own stories, right? Is there something else I wanted to share there? So many stories. I think we'll go into the Mahavidyas and then we'll see if the Ganesh story wants to come or not. So we have all these different manifestations. And they're all manifestations of who? Parvati. So they're all the consorts of Lord Shiva, except one. And there's different lineages. You'll see them in different orders. You'll find a lot of different approaches. You'll find many watered down, like if you're a Matangi woman, you'll be like this. And okay, it's not that there's not truth to that, but you cannot water down these goddesses. They are full power. They're to be approached with the utmost respect. And their energies, like I said before, they're with all of us. We experience them in our lives. And now, just through understanding who they are, maybe some of you read the David Frawley book, I recommend it. So you can start to see how they show up. Now, one thing I will say, David Frawley put the mantras in the book. Don't chant the mantras. Really important with these goddesses to have initiation with a proper qualified teacher. I am not that. But I can point you in some directions if you do feel that that's part of your path.